y'all, it's Bart, and welcome to another episode of Soccer for Us. On this episode, we are talking about leaving a job early and also not being able to perform a job because you might have a nagging injury. So a lot of interesting positions for this U.S. men's national team as we catch up with them just over, I guess, a month before their very first World Cup match here in 2026. So to talk with me tonight is the greatest historian on U.S. soccer Twitter. It is Thomas, aka U.S. Keeper. Thomas, good evening. I have to know, have you ever just dipped on a job early?
I haven't. I'm pretty loyal. I actually probably give too much notice. Honestly, I give, months notice sometimes when the two jobs, previous jobs, I gave months notice before I left. So try to respect my employer and make sure everything is closed out the best I can. But not everyone does that. Sometimes they just they walk away. So.
Well, I'm glad you're still here. And also joining us tonight is a man who maybe wouldn't walk away from a job early, but wouldn't say no to, I don't know, 6-7 times the amount they're making right now. It's Lawrence Dockery. Lawrence, welcome back to the show.
Well, I'm going to take just a little bit of umbrage with that. I like to think that I'm pretty loyal. I've had the same regular 8 to 5 jobs this is my 13th year at it now, and I've been a referee in October. It'll have been 20 years, so I don't get around too terribly much.
Well, as a referee, I would also say that if they wanted to pay us more, I think we would all agree that they should do that. But
here locally, we're getting our tournament fees. I believe are going up in the fall, and our rec league fees are going up in the fall.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
I don't know how much or to what, but I'm not going to say no.
Well, they always say they need more referees, and then when you tell them all the ways to get more referees, like, oh, paying them more, they seem to go, well, not that part.
Making sure the people that attack 12-year-old kids that are refereeing don't get to come back.
Yeah, that part too. All right, well, let's jump into this because, again, we are just over a month before we play our first World Cup match here at home against Paraguay on June 12th in Los Angeles. Matt Crocker, back in April, announced that he would vacate his job as Sporting Director of U.S. Soccer to take the same role, thereabouts, with Saudi Arabia. He left just barely 3 years into the gig and about, at that point in time, 2 months before the U.S. was going to play in the World Cup. One that is brimming with potential to kind of, change the game in this country, but certainly change the way that U.S. soccer is able to operate, which you would think that the man who is in charge of making the sporting decisions and direction would appreciate the opportunity to use a home World Cup as a springboard to enact all of the crazy, cool ideas he has. But guess not. Weirdly, just before his departure, and I know this because I was there, he was hosting tours of the new National Training Center, touting what, quote, we could do with this facility after the World Cup. But he left. Didn't matter. He up and left. This sparks a lot of questions. I think mainly why he would leave now. And then I think the bigger question that probably is harder to answer is what did he do or what did he accomplish while here? So I'm going to start asking you, Thomas, why did he leave so quickly and so close to the tournament that could define his career?
For me, I look at it like this, that, obviously there's a couple easy answers, but, U.S. soccer has a history of interfering in how everything is done, right? They've always done that. The history is there. I've delved very deeply into the history and interference U.S. soccer has played into, from coaching hiring to interfering in decision making of rosters. And I don't know if that's happening in this case here, but it seems to me like if Matt Crocker went through all this stuff to hire multiple coaches, to bring in Pochettino, that he would want to see this through. he would want to run through this and say, hey, you know what? I had my hands and my fingerprints all over this, and it's in the U.S. There's just so many reasons why you figure he would want to see it through. To me, I just wonder if there's behind the scenes things that were happening that he just said, you know what? I don't want to deal with this anymore. I have this opportunity. I can take this now. I can still be part of this World Cup in the same type of position, and I can facilitate that and not have to deal with the pressures of a home World Cup, and maybe in his mind, maybe a failure of a World Cup for the host country. I just don't know, but to me, there seems to be some of that possibility here, and maybe interference from the federation, which wouldn't surprise me. But there's no indication of that. But we wouldn't find out till later on if that was the case, typically, because U.S. soccer, definitely holds things pretty close. But at some point, if there was interference of roster selection and hiring and all these different things, I'm sure we'll hear something about it along the way.
Obviously, that is, and not that you're incorrect, a little bit of a tinfoil hat conspiracy, but there's been patterns of that throughout history, as you lay out in your most recent article for Chasing a Cup. But Lawrence, I think what I want to ask you is, that could be true, but maybe it's also that he got offered a lot of money to go to Saudi Arabia, and the only reason people go to Saudi Arabia is for money.
Yeah, right off the bat, those are the first two things when this came out. The first two things that popped into my head were PIF oil money, duh, and B. Well, and now they've got all this extra money because they're not funding the Live Golf Tour anymore, so they've got all this extra money to burn. So why not throw it at Matt Crocker? Saudi Arabia also, bizarrely enough, just fired Hervé Renard, a month out from the World Cup, which I thought was very strange. We see this happen a lot where, like a month before the World Cup, somebody will get fired. Something like Ange Postecoglou before Russia 2018. Like they had already qualified, and he said, all right, I'm out. Julian Lopetegui with Spain said, hey, when his tournament's over, I'm taking the Madrid job. And they said, get the F out of here. And then he spent the next 6 months begging U.S. Soccer, please give me the job. And they said, sorry, we've already got our guy. It's not official. We got him. Thanks, but no thanks. The second thing that pops into my mind after oil money, is if you think the team that you are in charge of is going to kick ass and take names, you don't unass it right before the tournament starts. So the second thing that popped in my brain was, he is much more behind the scenes than the rest of us. And just like you at the National Training Center, after one of the two games in Atlanta, I don't remember if I told you all this, but they just let random fans into the press conference, which is a recipe for disaster. I'm sure that's part of the, if you spent $100 gazillion on the VIP package or whatever, that included getting to the press conference. And as we're leaving, Matt Crocker walks in to shake hands and kiss babies with the VIP fans in the press conference. And again, that's 2 weeks before he decides to take the Saudi job. So oil money, duh, and you do have to wonder if maybe he on the inside thinks this is a fucking train wreck. I want no part of any of this anymore. I'm out, which is hilarious because we all know you were here, man. Like you hired multiple coaches this same cycle, right? You are paying the guy that you hired more than U.S. Soccer has ever paid any national team coach ever. You're paying more than I think maybe all but two national teams are paying their coaches right now. So bro, your fingerprints are all over this, whether you're physically here or not. So even if he thinks that unassing it and saying, look, man, I was gone. You can't put this on me. No, we can put this. If it goes south, we can definitely put this on you because just walking out the door before the house falls in doesn't mean you get the fire.
Yeah, I think, Thomas, that's a fair point. But I guess, maybe that's the answer to the, why did he leave now?
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, it's still a head scratcher to me. I mean, I will say the whole Matt Crocker experience, and again, this position and role has not been great for U.S. soccer. They haven't really defined it. I mean, he was very behind the scenes outside of the hiring of Emma Hayes and Mauricio Pochettino. Like he was. Other than that, we didn't hear much from him. Like what was he doing? Like even
Yeah.
you know Goosh, what is he doing? Like like we don't hear or see them, right? And not that we necessarily need to, but like there is that question of what are you doing? Like what's going on like
Mm-hmm.
behind the scenes in
Mm-hmm.
terms of because there is this bigger vision for the technical director or sporting director, whatever it is they're calling the position. Uh, and you have to wonder how much he was doing. I mean, what are we going to see any impacts of this short or long term? And to me, that I think that's, you know, it's in question. I mean,
Well, that's what I have a problem with is I think mostly is I'm not saying that he didn't do anything because I don't know because we're not like let's be honest. A lot of the stuff he probably does or did is not making the press release. Let's just be real honest, right? They're not touting the new scouting network they've made with scouts here and there and everywhere, or we actually introduced these types of training methodologies for the U16 training camps. Like they're not going to tell us that stuff, right? Like that's not exciting. So to like be fair to that, I don't know what he's done, right? Because it's just not stuff that they're going to like report, right? Obviously with the head coach, we very tangibly see things that are going to we tangibly see their efforts and their work and their impact or lack of impact on the field fairly immediately, right? Like it's not a secret. But in a position like sporting director, it's fair to say that these are not things that necessarily are going to be seen in the short term. They are like I mean when you hear him talk, they were supposed to be long-term goals. And I don't mean like 10 years from now, but it's like okay, well if he started implementing again like new training methodologies in the U16 boys training camp, right? Which we have. We don't see those games or players enough to know if that actually matters. And by the time it does matter, by their 17s, well, that's a whole year away, or the 20s, that's 3 years away. Are we? Do we really know that that's him, or do we even get to see anything until we know that it worked? And so that's kind of the question we just all have with this position is what do they do, and then more importantly, like how does that actually affect things?
yeah, and that's it hasn't been well defined along the way. Again, I don't know if U.S. soccer has to speak to that. I think the results will speak to that short and long term of whether those things those
Mm-hmm.
decisions have impacted, the development of the program. I mean, it's not a 3-year project. It's a 10 or 15-year project, right? To see really how that translates in general. But to be clear, we talk about this all the time. U.S. soccer's job isn't to develop players. Like that's not they're there to try to get the most out of that player pool and the best support the players, when you have them, in your possession, which is very minimal. And so I think it's very hard for club individuals to come in to international coaching or international technical directors and be able to do something on an international level that they were doing at a club level because it's completely different. And that's the challenge with any of these people coming into it. They may be the smartest around, but how are they going to figure out how to build a program, build a roster, all these different things that go into international soccer that is just very unique. Some of it just falls
Mm-hmm.
together, it seems like, for some of these more experienced top tier countries, and US is always just seems to be fighting themselves.
Yeah, Lawrence, it does feel like this is not making an excuse for Crocker, but it's just acknowledging the reality of our country. I mean, is the sporting director even make sense when you consider that, as Thomas said, player development is done by all 50 state soccer associations, and some of those states have multiple soccer associations, right? At very best, U.S. soccer are just identifying talent, bringing them into camp, and hoping that they learn something that they can then go. But like most of the time, these players aren't being developed by U.S. Soccer. So again, the question just comes down to like, what does the sporting director do, and like, does it? I don't want to say if it matters or not, but like, does it matter to have someone who is, according to the position, the chief soccer official overseeing all of the national teams? Like, does that matter, or do we need it?
I'd rather have it than not.
Sure.
Because, we do have a talent identification and development problem. And now I guess maybe the more cynical among us would argue that maybe U.S. Soccer is part of the problem and not part of the solution. I don't know that I want to go that far. I think that's just dependent on who you have in each role. But I would rather have a sporting director. You gotta figure out a way to get everybody pulling in the same direction. And by everybody, I don't literally mean everybody in the whole country, because that's just not going to happen, because geographically, demographically, population, whatever you want to call it, we're just too damn big. And I think that's what a lot of people don't realize. Like, oh, just do what this country does. Yeah, that country is the size of Shelby County, Tennessee. No. So I would rather have the role of sporting director than not, but I would kind of like the role to be more clearly and publicly defined, and maybe have that individual a little bit more, I don't know, in front of the cameras, maybe. Not exactly sure how to say it.
I kind of agree with you. They're not really instrumental in their goal is not to say, these are our new training methodologies. Their goal is to hire the person who implements the training methodologies. Is that kind of what you're going with?
Sort of, yeah. And, if it's, you need somebody with some sex appeal. And, we sort of have that with the national team coach, right? We did, under no circumstances did we have that with Greg Berhalter. Not personality-wise, not resume-wise, not playing style-wise, and not results-wise. You have that a little bit with Mauricio Pochettino in terms of resume. That resume has a lot of sex appeal. Results-wise, I don't think we're there. Personality-wise, maybe, but with English being a second language, if things get a little bit difficult, he will hide behind the fact that English is not his first language, and kind of hem and haw and say, "Ooh, I don't really know what it is that you're asking." So if that's the case, then you're going to need, I think, the sporting director to kind of be the sex appeal and be the voice and the face. And that has not been Matt Crocker. Matt Crocker has been very content to, at the coaching hire press conferences and at the National Training Center. And that's really all you see or hear from him. And if there was a lot of other stuff that was going well, I would be okay with that. But there's really not a lot of other stuff going well right now. And I need somebody to be a salesman for the program, and we don't really have that. And I know he gets a lot of flack, but that was one of the best things about Jurgen Klinsmann, was that he was a salesman for this program. And I don't think it's a coincidence that attendance and TV ratings were never better.
Yeah, that's true. And I think I'm looking at this from a club situation, and I'm not saying they're the same. I think, Thomas, you mentioned that, like, club and country are not the same, but there are similarities. And I think, in theory, your goal of a sporting director is to be, I don't want to say agnostic, right? But their job is not necessarily results on the field driven the way that a coach's job is, right? Because ultimately, Matt Crocker, yes, hiring and firing coaches is one of his main jobs, and will be the main job of a sporting director. But, like, well, it's not his fault that, like, Mauricio Pochettino decided that Christian Pulisic doesn't need to come to a camp because he's got a hangnail or some bullshit. Like, that's, like, maybe his job is to be like, hey man, like, we actually do need him to come in here. But at the same time, it's like, that's not his job to meddle. Like, it shouldn't be his job to meddle and stuff like that. So that's just kind of, again, where we get to this tension of how involved are they? What do they actually do? And how much influence do they actually have? And maybe the answer is they don't need to have a whole lot of influence, or maybe the answer is, like, they need to be the one doing all the influencing. I don't know.
Yeah, I wonder, I wonder personally, like, how much roster building goes into that position, right? I mean, because to me, like, one, because you had a coach that was coming in that didn't know the player pool, that had to learn it, right? So, like, where is that? There is a combination of, like, helping along and giving things and saying, hey, giving recommendations, because we saw an interview where was it Bradley and Klinsman, and they said U.S. Soccer didn't have any real feedback on the rosters, and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, well, that sometimes it's a little hard to believe. I think there's a little bit, but then Bradley goes, well, yeah, but they would ask about players. Okay, when you're asking about players, you're kind of hinting, well, what do you think about this? Like you're leading them into something,
Yeah.
right? And so, and they're not stupid. So how much of that happened under Crocker? Did he learn the roster? I mean, he wasn't here all that long either to be able to learn kind of the whole player pool, because I don't know, names get thrown out here late in the cycle as you head to the World Cup. What about this player? What about that player? Right?
Wow.
And that's just fandom. That's just hype. That's just something to probably, hit, just something to discuss. But those are the things in general, like who's keeping their eye on these sorts of things in general, because there's a lot to watch, right? And I don't know how much of Klinsman's coaching staff is involved in that, and how much U.S. Soccer is facilitating that and providing feedback or updates or statistics or whatever it is, because there's a lot. And what's Crocker's role in that? I mean, again, he'd have to do it for the men and women, right? Because it's not just the men's thing he's overseeing. So it's a question I've had. U.S. Soccer, I don't think defines the position well ever. They never really laid it out, even when it was Ernie Stewart. Was that? Am I right?
Yeah.
Is that Ernie Stewart? Oh, yeah. In that role.
That man walked around like he was a god among men. Oh,
yeah, he did. So I think the one area that I do think, right, the Federation will influence Matt Crocker specifically, or the sporting director, but we'll say Matt Crocker during his time here, would have been his biggest job, which to me is hiring and firing coaches. And during his tenure, he hired 3 coaches. He fired 2 and hired 3, right? So he came on late in the process or whatever. We don't really know, because there seems to be a lot of conflicting reports. And as much as people think Jesse Marsch is a great coach, I don't think you're a reliable narrator, because you're obviously biased from your own experience. I'm not saying it's not true that you felt that way or that you experienced it that way. I'm just saying that you're only giving us one side of the story. But he hired Berhalter for the second time. He hired Emma Hayes, and he hired Mauricio Pochettino. Now, we can evaluate, I think, his effectiveness, his success on those 3 decisions, because those are the biggest decisions you make in theory, as sporting director. So I don't think, I know Lawrence will agree with me, I think it's an unmitigated flop and fail to have rehired Greg Berhalter. I'm not saying you should have hired, I'm not saying you should have hired Jesse Marsch, but I think we all agree that getting Berhalter back was a huge mistake. One that ultimately, in theory, could impact the way that we actually do perform at this World Cup, if you kind of want to get into the weeds about it.
Mm-hmm.
He did hire Emma Hayes. I don't necessarily think that requires a stroke of brilliance to go hire one of the top 3 female coaches in the world. If you go, hey, can we go hire her? And U.S. Soccer says, well, yeah, we'll pay up. We'll give you $1.5 million.
And that's the whole thing to me, and why I feel that Matt Crocker knew that rehiring Greg was a mistake, and I don't think it was his decision to make. This is why I've had my tinfoil hat out on this for several years, because
I don't even think it takes a tinfoil hat, Lawrence, because you just look at when he came into the process.
When the decision was made. They rehired Greg, you couldn't point to this is anything on the field that said this is why. What was the reasoning for rehiring him? We did this whole battery of aptitude tests and mental acuity and this, that, and the other, and 700 hours of interviews and all this bullshit. And it comes down to, hey, here's this super awesome, eminently qualified women's coach, best women's coach in the world. Yeah, let's just go hire her. You mean you didn't have to do a whole battery of aptitude tests and psych evaluations and all that? And by the way, if you really did psych evaluations on Greg Berhalter, how on God's green earth did you rehire him? That dude is a certified psychopath. Go ask anybody that dealt with him when he coached in Sweden. They wanted him institutionalized because he's a psycho and he's a bad person. And then, you get Mauricio Pochettino, who has a more polished resume than any U.S. coach has ever had. He's managed the biggest clubs in the world with some of the biggest and most famous players in the history of the game. Did you need to run a battery of tests and evaluations? No, he had an awesome resume. He wins a lot of games. He's hired. So right off the bat, we already know that Crocker, I think, in his mind, knew that bringing Greg back was a disaster. And I think it was out of his hands. My tinfoil hat remains. The contract extension was signed before they went to Qatar. And when the Reyna story broke, he was like, if you fire me, I'm suing you. And U.S. Soccer has spent the last decade in courtrooms, and they were tired of it. So they're like, we'll bring you back over the summer. So F- for bringing back Greg, even though I don't know how much of that was his decision. But ultimately, you are the sporting director. You could very publicly have come out and said, no, I think this is stupid. This guy's a bum and a psycho, and I don't want him back. And hiring Emma Hayes, A+, because really all we've got to go on right now is the Olympics, and she brought the gold medal back.
She won a gold medal. That's
which, if you think about, is not it had been 12 years since the U.S. women had won a gold. They showed their ass in Rio, and they sort of showed their ass in Tokyo. Those were their two worst Olympic performances ever. And then Pochettino, it's an incomplete right now, but it's not an F-, but I can't give it an A just quite yet. I think we're looking somewhere C+, B-. Depending on what happens.
It's not like, look, okay. Obviously, there are circumstances. We played one tournament with Mauricio Pochettino. We didn't win it. Yeah, I know it's a Gold Cup.
I guess technically you
but
can say
you know what I'm saying, like
the Nations League.
Yeah, and we didn't win. Oh yeah, two, because we didn't win the Nations League. But that's the thing, right? Is you're right. We don't really have anything to evaluate it on. But Thomas, we get to look at these three coaching hires and go, okay, maybe he learned he was a little more involved in the Berhalter hire than Thomas wants to believe, or than Lawrence wants to believe. But I kind of agree with you, Lawrence, that there were things set in motion that he was just the person who was supposed to sign off on it, and probably did an interview with Greg and was like, yeah, he sounds great. I don't think it's crazy to say that Greg Berhalter probably meets all of the check boxes probably a little better than Jesse Marsch does when you're doing those kind of interpersonal stuff. I don't know. Jesse's a great coach as well, so I don't know. But,
he keeps beating us.
Maybe he learned something from that and said, I'm not doing that again. I'm just going to go hire the best player, the best person who I think, the best coach for the job that's available. I don't know. But, we do have Emma Hayes to look at. We have Mauricio Pochettino to look at. So at least we have like two of those that we can say, okay, he did this. That's about it, though.
And then I guess he was also probably fairly instrumental in getting the National Training Center done, which is
that does seem to be accurate.
It's a great story, and it's going to be a great facility. I remain skeptical that it is somehow going to turn us into some world leader. Like, I'm glad that we have it, and I think it's great, but ultimately, does it really matter all that much? I guess maybe it saves U.S. Soccer from having to rent training facilities in Kansas City or Austin or Cincinnati or Orlando. But it's great, and we love it. And they have not yet tired of telling us that it's the second largest national training center in the world, only behind England's. And, I guess that's probably his biggest, the Emma Hayes, Mauricio Pochettino, and the National Training Center.
So if you look at those metrics, Thomas, again, it's hard to say I agree about the National Training Center, but it seems like a good idea.
Yeah, again, I think we'll see how kind of it falls into place, with the youth stuff. There's the youth tournaments. We haven't seen anything we haven't already seen when we talk about successes within the youth program.
Yeah.
I think that's when we look at U.S. soccer as a whole. Like what we haven't seen is anything of that next level. It's like, yep, they got to here, they got to here, they got to here. Okay, but they've done that. They've
Yeah.
done it over and over and over again.
Even the U23 men at the Olympics, it was like, okay, we made the knockouts, and what happened?
All right, exactly. They're not doing anything that. I mean, they're doing what they need to be doing, or they expected to be doing, but they haven't. And this includes all levels. It's that next level. It's that next step, right? Are they going to be able to do that? I don't suspect to see that at this World Cup. Hopefully I'm wrong, but like it's that like, okay, now we're in it, right? Now we're here. We're in a quarterfinal, right?
Yeah.
With a chance to play in a semifinal, like that sort of thing where we've only been in my lifetime once, right? To be at that level.
And that's, I mean, I think fair criticism of Matt, but also again, what was he supposed to radically change in his less than 3 years here? And that's the kind of thing I keep coming back to is homeboy didn't even want to stick around to like make sure his processes and systems got implemented the right way and stuck through. So that's one criticism I have of him. The other criticism that we have talked about a lot on this podcast, both programs spent a lot of time this cycle under interim head coaches. Now, on the women's side, yes, Emma Hayes was hired, and we said, okay, if getting you means we have to kind of wait for, if hiring you means you'll not come until the end of your European club season in May, okay, fine. And to like, okay, but you know, that still was 14 games, I think, that Twyla was coaching this team from when Vlatko was fired, rightfully so. That was one thing he got right. Maybe could have done it sooner, but hey, you got that right. Until she came on, there were 14 matches, and that is a lot. But when you look at on the other side with Berhalter and then Pochettino, the two mistakes that I think he did make, especially with Berhalter, was, if you remember, when they rehired him, first off, they took forever. I mean, we went through 2 interim head coaches. The men have played 14. Sorry. The men have played 14 matches as well this cycle without, with an interim head coach. But with Berhalter, they hired him. They said, oh, but he's not coaching the Gold Cup. And I'm like, this is a guy who basically is coaching the same. Like, what are we doing here? Now, obviously, BJ Callahan ended up winning that. That's doing well there. That's cool. But like, not winning it, but doing well there. That's cool. But like, you did that, and then you hire Pochettino, but say, oh, actually, the September friendly window, we're not having him coach either. We'll wait until October. Those two decisions to me were like actual blunders, because it just set your team back a whole nother window.
Yeah, I just think it's a failure from U.S. soccer to have 2 cycles where you have like that much being disjointed. I mean, Mexico is known for it. I mean, I know that there are rivals to the south.
They hire and fire people all the time.
It's crazy. Like they're used to that sort of thing, but like to build that continuity. And again, I think the points of entry are worth discussing. Does a great coach need a full cycle to build a system and build the continuity? I don't have a great answer for that. I think if you have the right tournaments in the right situation, maybe you can pull them in to the second half of the cycle. And if you're playing in a Copa America and a Gold Cup, maybe you have that opportunity to build that continuity and bring those the players into the pool that you need to kind of assess it. But that's if you already know the pool. And Pochettino he didn't have that much time, obviously, because he came in after the failure at Copa America. But I think there is a room for a half cycle manager if you kind of know who it's going to be and you have it all set up in place, kind of, because the first half of it, what do you like other than introducing new talent to the pool? You have a Gold Cup and nothing else, and qualifying doesn't begin until that second half of it. So I think that's where U.S. soccer may move forward differently. I don't know.
Oh, I disagree. We're about to. I mean, everything we just said about interims and all of that. Get ready for round 3 or 4 or 5 because we don't have a sporting director right now.
And
if the
sporting
director is in charge of hiring and firing coaches, we're not getting a new sporting director probably until January. Like I'm going to set the over/under at January, which means we won't have a coach until at least the Gold Cup next year. So we're already going to be 18 months into the new cycle before we have our head coach.
Yeah. And that is legitimately the issue, right? Because if U.S. Soccer wants to use a sporting director, therefore the sporting director will hire the head coach. That's their job, right? You're going to have to hire a sporting director before you hire a head coach. So I'm with you. Like, we may not get a head coach until, I don't know, the March friendlies of 2027. And that is not good because, while this World Cup cycle does kick off into a normal one, last one was a little congested because we had to move the World Cup to November because we played it in a country that is in a desert. It did compress that timeline. But this is going to be the third World Cup cycle in a row where we will start it without a head coach. And not like, oh, well, yeah, he's done, we have a guy coming in. Because that's what concerns me with Crocker leaving, is he should be the dude right now who is planning for Pochettino's departure. Because, look, I think you plan for him leaving because that's the most likely outcome. But if he says, I actually kind of want to stay, you go, oh, fine, whatever. Like, you didn't have enough time this cycle, fair enough, but you have to plan for you're getting a new coach. And to me, that is literally Matt Crocker's job right now, is planning for who your next head coach is, who's going to take over come late September after you've finished up this World Cup World Cup cycle.
Yeah, it's disappointing because it is always in flux, right? Like, and we don't even know what the path is. Do they, what's the path with the sporting director they're going? What's the path with the manager they're going? Like, in general, like, really, what are they trying to accomplish here, right? And maybe Matt Crocker accomplished everything that U.S. Soccer wanted him to accomplish, and they're like, "Yep, you're free to go. We're ready to go. We're comfortable. You put us in a good spot. Go ahead." You know what I mean? It's possible that that sort of thing. Because to me, like, him staying or him going, I don't think it's going to impact the team one way or the other, right? I don't know what direct impacts that existed there. So I think that's where, it's not as big of a deal. So, but like, what are they looking for in that? And so, yeah, I think that's going to be interesting to see what the candidates look like. I'm sure they're going to want Americans and in some of those roles. But does that allow you to maybe bring in an outsider for the coach or for filling of the other positions? I don't know. I think that's where we just don't know what's the long-term vision of U.S. Soccer there. It's going to be interesting to see how they kind of rank the Pochettino era, right? I think it's going to really be dictated by, in some respects, how the team performs at the World Cup, but that's not going to be fully on him. There's a lot of things that you can't control in a World Cup that happens to teams.
I think, to summarize this before we completely move on to the who's going to replace him, I don't think it's good optics to leave right now, but I don't really think it will matter for this World Cup. Now, I am concerned what it means for starting the next cycle, but for right now, there's nothing that Matt Crocker is doing that is going to make us somehow better at the World Cup, because right now it's all on Mauricio Pochettino, his staff, and the support staff around the team. Sure, Crocker is part of that, but there are other people in place who probably do way more for the team on a day-to-day basis than Crocker does. So let's now look at who maybe you would consider, and I'm going to take the first name off the board, sorry, and it's Oguchi Onyewu, because he currently is VP of Sport. If you are prioritizing getting your coach in place quickly, to me it makes sense to say, hey, after the World Cup, Gooch is our new VP of Sport. He'll be starting the coaching search. It's a blessing that he's already been in the system and knows what we're trying to accomplish, and we see this as a continuation of the long-term goals that we've been set forth already. But Thomas, there probably are other options that, I'm not saying they're better than Gooch, but there are probably other options. What would you who would you throw out there?
The problem is that some of the names I have are former managers that are they're older. And I don't know if they, I mean, I think they have the knowledge, they're understanding how U.S. soccer runs, which I think there's a lot of great things there. But I mean, I don't know if they want to be, a sporting director at their age. Do they, how much could they still coach, or or play? Like, I mean, I have Bob Bradley. He's not with the club right now, which I think, and I love Bob Bradley, but how long is he going to be in the role for? Right? How long can he sustain that? Like, I mean, I think that's the question. Like, what are you looking for long term with these different options? And I think Bruce Arena is another option to consider. Right? I mean, two great soccer minds that have both coached the national team and had success with the national team. But again, they're I mean, I don't know what, I mean, I have to look the ages, but I mean, they're both definitely in their later 60s, if not early 70s, right? And so I just don't know if those individuals have the stamina needed to kind of have a long-term run through a cycle, at least, to be able to kind of put things in place. And I mean, U.S. soccer is so volatile. I don't know if anyone's going to last much more than a cycle in general. I mean, there's, I'm sure you could look at other players that have played the game that you might consider, for that. But I mean, I don't know what your thoughts, Lawrence or Bart are on a player kind of coming into that position that could do that. I don't, I don't get a sense for if there would be success in that or not.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Bob Bradley, and that's one. He'd kind of been out of sight, out of mind for me for a while until that Fox Soccer Coaches Roundtable that Stu Holden did with Bradley, Jurgen Klinsmann, and Steve Sampson. And somebody in the YouTube comments section said, "What about Bob Bradley as the next sporting director?" And I like to give Bob Bradley a lot of grief for blowing a pair of 2-0 Cup final leads, 09 Confederations Cup and 11 Gold Cup, the latter of which cost him his job. Much to the chagrin of his brother, who has DM'd me over the years to express his displeasure with my displeasure. But if you think about it, he has a wealth of experience from around the world. And I think if you're going to be the sporting director for U.S. soccer, not only do you need to know how American soccer works, you also need to know how soccer works in the rest of the world and have lived it and experienced it. And Bob Bradley has coached collegiately in the U.S. He's managed MLS teams. He's managed the U.S. national team. He's managed the Egyptian national team. He's managed clubs in Norway, France, Wales, and Canada. I mean, that's a wealth of global experience on 3 different continents. But to Thomas's point, he's probably pushing 70 years old. And if you're going to be the sporting director, I feel like that it's like we're very upset with Matt Crocker for hitting the peace sign 3 years into his tenure. That it is a job that probably requires you to be in it for the long haul. And there's also the fact that the Bradley family is still very, very, very unhappy and mad at U.S. soccer for getting rid of Bob the way they did after the Gold Cup in 2011. I think it was time. I thought it was time in real time. I still think it was time. But honestly, if you were just to tell me that Bob Bradley was the next sporting director for U.S. soccer, I would. The more that I've thought about it, the more that I get closer to being all in on it. As far as like a former player, I don't know. I know
Eric Ronaldo, here you come.
Oh Jesus! I cannot for the life of me understand what he talks about. I can't. It's all over. It's just the ravings of a lunatic. I
low-key think he has CTE. And I'm not trying to make a joke of that. I think there's something there.
Somebody will say something like, "Hey, great goal in MLS today," and he'll go on this 50-tweet diatribe about all this. What all we said was it was a great goal. Why are you so mad? But it's the list that we've talked about. Bruce Arena. I don't see him as he's a coach through and through.
He's a coach.
I think
he's not even a youth development guy. He's a coach.
No, He just needs to stay a manager, and he's taken the Earthquakes from absolute garbage to competency, which is an incredible feat. On the list, Peter Vermees, Jim Curtin, and here's why. I don't know if we're going to jump ahead. I'm jumping ahead here or not, but
No, go ahead.
I suspect the next U.S. coach is going to be one of these three guys. Okay, because U.S. Soccer loves to go complete opposite of what they just did. You had uber American Bob Bradley. You went to Jurgen Klinsmann. You didn't like Jurgen Klinsmann, so you went back to Bruce Arena and then Greg Berhalter. Things ended badly with Greg Berhalter, so you went with a South American guy who's managed in Europe and Mauricio Pochettino. So that means we're swinging back to born and bred American through and through, USA. It's going to be one of these three guys. I think Brian Schmetzer from the Seattle Sounders. I think currently unemployed, most recently with LAFC, Steve Cherundolo. And currently unemployed, most recently with the Philadelphia Union, Jim Curtin. I think your next U.S. men's national team coach is going to be one of those three guys. In December. Next, the next U.S. coach is going to be one of those three guys. That's why I don't think Jim Curtin is going to be the sporting director, because he's, in my mind, going to be what they think they need to be the next coach.
I mean, I don't disagree, right? I think that it's very likely and I say this knowing how this sounds, the brass at U.S. Soccer will probably say, hey, we should probably go look at an American guy. And I don't think any of those are terrible decisions. Like, I especially don't think that, and this is probably not a great take, but I don't think Steve Cherundolo is the worst idea. I really genuinely do not, because I think his criticism at LAFC was he was a little too defensive, and kind of the tactics were, I don't know, guys, go out there and fight. And I'm thinking, yeah, that sounds like what the U.S. national team should play like. Be a little more defensive and go out there and just run like hell and fight. That sounds like what we do best.
It's what we did when Bob Bradley was the coach, and Steve Cherundolo is one of the key pieces of that 2010 World Cup team.
Yeah. So I don't hate that shout. I truly don't. I do think that if you're looking at former players, you're looking at guys who have like an Ernie Stewart when he was hired, definitely like way past their playing days. To me, coach is very much you just retire. I think we all see the writing on the wall that Michael Bradley will be the coach of the U.S. national team in the next, I don't know, maybe 10 years. Who knows? It is not next, but he'll be next in some capacity. But is there a spot for a guy like, this is gonna, okay, I don't mean him specifically, but maybe a guy like Jermaine Jones, who has played, managed it a little bit, but is, a little, you could say, past that. I'm, again, not Jermaine Jones. I don't think he should be in charge of that, but I'm curious when they look at former player, how recently they go for a sporting director role, or if they find someone who has been, like you mentioned, Schmetzer. Well, there are other guys in U.S. Soccer who have been doing front office roles. I'm kind of looking at the guy here in Atlanta. I don't think he's done a great job, but Chris Henderson, who's been at Seattle, Miami, and now Atlanta, and going, well, is that a guy that you might look at, who has been basically the technical director, sporting director at these clubs, general manager, whatever you want to call it? Is that an option? So I do wonder if maybe it's an MLS guy who, former player, maybe not a U.S. Soccer national teamer guy, but, a former player then turned front office dude. That's a possibility too.
I mean, Bocanegra, obviously, he was rumored for a while, and obviously you're familiar with him, Bart, with Atlanta, but I mean, he was a player that was mentioned for a while.
He's very good at spending money.
Right. To be in a position like that, and maybe he's somebody that's considered, right? I mean,
the story is great. That press release line sounds great. Former USMNT captain appointed sporting director. That sounds great.
It does. I mean, and maybe he fits the role. I don't know. But I mean, I will say what I think we're learning from all this, though, is that you need a flavor of understanding of how the federation runs, whether you agree with it or you don't. there is a way to have to navigate this, and we probably all in our personal work careers, have fought and battled through management and corporate and all these different things, and saying, you know what, like, and realizing, crap, I'm fighting an uphill battle here. I
Yeah.
need to go along to get along, and so maybe that hire needs to be that. And then you take a risk on a manager that maybe not American, and that's where you kind of
Mhm.
say, hey, I'm in just giving you that info and saying, hey, here's a lot within our culture, here's a lot within our federation that you need to understand when that time is right,
Mm.
right? Pochettino's maybe came in at the right time, maybe didn't. I don't know, but at some point you do need to take that leap. It can't always, especially for a country like U.S. that's just stuck making it to the knockout stage and losing type of thing in the World Cup, where we kind of need something additional, and that's where you take
Yeah.
that risk with a manager. Within that, and that risk could be with a young American managing. It doesn't need to be with a foreigner. It could just be, hey, you know
Yeah.
what, we're gonna bring in, a recently retired player. Here you go, it's all yours, right? And you see it all the time in the NFL where they bring a 35-year-old guy in and they
Yeah.
go ahead and make it to the Super Bowl, right? And so to me, those are the risks that you have in there, but you still need some leadership behind that that's going to facilitate that. And I don't know if
Mm.
that's an American or not, but there are, the U.S. soccer has a lot to do, and I think they're too busy right now to even consider that, as the World Cup approaches, which maybe gives them time to do that. But I just feel we'll have another year of
Yeah.
influx and just interim managers and all this crazy crap. And maybe Pochettino doesn't leave right away if he doesn't have a job after the World Cup and he hangs around. But who knows?
I mean, obviously, this is dependent on if we actually look decent. But I have a hard time believing he won't find a job after the World Cup. Looking especially at some of the managerial jobs that are going to open up at the end of the season in England and other countries, I just find it hard he won't. Same with Julian Nagelsmann, Thomas Tuchel, and Mauricio Pochettino, all revered club coaches, are coaching in this World Cup. I can't imagine they're sticking with those federations longer. But those.
I
But
also,
I do.
have to imagine the big selling point to Pochettino is you're managing the World Cup host nation on home soil.
Yeah.
And once the World Cup is over, that's gone.
He's going to go to Spain.
Correct.
Yeah. I do want to just wrap this up before we move on to the next topic we'll talk about. But I think we kind of agree that it makes sense to hire a U.S.-based person for this job. Not saying that Matt Crocker that was a problem with him, but I think for me it's just because they do have a slightly more intrinsic motivation to make U.S. soccer great. I'm not saying Oguchi Onyewu wouldn't have left for Saudi Arabia paying him millions of dollars. Again, I will not begrudge anyone for getting the bag like that, but I'll a little bit call out your ethics and morals, but hey, get that money, I guess. But
I refuse
don't
to
think an
believe
American
that he
would have
was
done
making
that.
just minimum wage for U.S. soccer, though.
Reportedly he was somewhere in the 600,000 range, so he was doing quite fine. Which
I would be all right if I was making $600,000 a year.
Yeah. But that seems like a consensus. We just kind of agree that an American might be the best fit for this, but American is also a loose-ish term. Certainly, someone who has experience in American soccer seems like what we want. Let's end that discussion of Matt Crocker because, again, ultimately, it doesn't have any effect on what this team is going to do at the World Cup. But things that will affect how this team performs on the field are players who are or are not injured. So let's talk real quickly about some injury updates as I said, are just over 30 some days from our first World Cup match. To start positively, Serginho Dest is now back in action officially with PSV. After about 2 months out with a hamstring injury, he played about 30 minutes for PSV last weekend. This is great. This is great news, Thomas.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there are just certain players you want on this roster healthy, ready to go. Dest is one of them, and from every indication, he put in the time, the everything he needed to do to ensure that he was going to have plenty of time to recover and get some match time in before the roster selection, which I think, I mean, that's just that just shows the the passion of him wanting to play for his
Mhm.
home country, period, but especially on home soil. I mean,
Mm.
it's a testament to the players that want to do this. It is heartbreaking to watch any of these injuries that we hear come down. As we are a month away from kicking off the World Cup, and um, it always are. For me, it always shows the lack of quality depth that U.S. has. Right, when we
Mm.
rely on a handful of players, right, to be like, oh man, we can't do. We need him. We need him. We need him. Like, you don't have that many great, talented players that play at a high level and are game changers. And Des is one of those. I feel
Yeah.
he can do so many different things, but he also could be battling for a starting position too. With I think Tim Wham might give him a run for his money. It's going to be interesting to see how that all
We'll see.
plays out, because we haven't seen a lot of these combinations, because most of these players haven't been healthy at the same time for the U.S. under Pochettino. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's true, but I think just glad to have him back. Lawrence, also at PSV, Ricardo Pepi is
Let's
playing
go.
consistently. Uh,
Yes.
but he's yet to play a full 90 for PSV after coming back from a broken arm. Is this concerning, or is it more like PSV is like winning a lot of these games and it doesn't really matter? What?
I'm going to go with the latter, and I think that's good for Ricardo Pepi because he's scoring in very limited minutes. I mean, he showed what he scored in the first minute the other day, if I'm not mistaken.
Something like that. Yeah, he scored very early on. Yeah.
So he had a lot of time off from the injury, and now he's not getting run into the ground now that he's back from injury. So you're telling me he's going to be fresh and ready to go at the World Cup, where our opponents are going to be tired from the end of long seasons, and they're not going to be ready to see El Tren rolling down the tracks at him. So I'm all in. If I'm PSV, give him 50 minutes. Don't give him a full 90 the rest of the way. I mean, there's probably maybe three, 4 games left anyway.
And they've already secured the league title, so they're
because that's what they do. No, I need Ricardo Pepi on this World Cup. I needed Ricardo Pepi on the roster in Qatar, and we took Jordan Morris and Jesus Ferreira, and I need Ricardo Pepi on this roster. And if he's scoring goals in limited amount of time, that means he's rested, he's fresh, and he's ready to go for the World Cup this year. Let's go. No threat.
Also returning from injury and not playing a whole lot, but again, I think we'll categorize that as a good thing, Thomas, is Tyler Adams. He has returned to play from the MCL tear back in February, but like Pepe, hasn't played a lot. He's only had one 90-minute performance, I should say. He has had 8 total appearances, 4 starts, but he's playing. Wrap him in bubble wrap and let's just get him to the World Cup, right?
Yeah, this is a guy I think we saw a little bit some lapses in that defensive piece of it and that leadership, and I think Adams provides that leadership, the communication, a lot of different things that right now that kind of back end of the defense is needing in that position. I mean, he always makes me nervous because his health has just never really, even the last World Cup, he was fighting an injury, even though he played and gutted it out. And, you respect that for a player to do that. But it really, we really need some consistency in that position. And whoever's going to partner with Adams or whoever in that position. And I think we'll mention a player here shortly that is likely to miss out on the World Cup. But we have to find that pairing back there.
Yeah.
And I think like the center back position, we just have not really found the right combination yet.
Yeah. Let's just talk about him. Johnny Cardoso today, we're recording on Thursday, exited training with now we know it's a high grade right ankle sprain. It's May 7. Ankle sprains are not hard to necessarily recover from. They're hard to get your strength back and make sure you're not re-injuring it, especially something that's a high-grade sprain like that. This definitely affects his chances of making the roster. I mean, we get a roster drop in less than 20 days. Plus, my very strongly held belief is he is the most direct replacement for Tyler Adams which, as we just talked about, you always got to have one of those handy. Look, I'll let both of y'all comment on this because this is, I think, a major injury. This is one that, getting hurt in this month does put your World Cup at jeopardy. But as I've said many times online this week, I think he is a much better player than our other defensive midfield options. And I think very directly is the most like-for-like replacement for a guy like Tyler Adams.
Yeah, I think it's a tough one. I mean, some people have Cardoso as a locked-in starter. Some people have him as, I don't particularly. I think he's on the fence of whether he would start or not. Again, he just hasn't shown well to be from the consistency standpoint, but I do think he should be on this roster if healthy. And yeah, I mean, to me, we have some options at the position, but I just don't think, they're as good as Cardoso when it comes down to it. And
I don't think he's a pairing for Adams. Like, that's why I don't think he should start. I don't think he's a pairing for Adams. I think Tanner Tessman or someone like that kind of looks like it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just go back to, like, he for me is the most. Yep, if Tyler's out, Johnny's starting. So that's why I think it's concerning Lawrence.
Yeah, well, the thing with Cardoso is like I think I've made this point before, that he's the reverse James Rodriguez. James Rodriguez has been terrible for every club he's played at for the last decade. But
he can barely breathe when he's playing for Minnesota United right now.
Puts that Colombia shirt on and turns it back to 2014 in Brazil every time.
Yeah.
And Cardoso is the exact opposite. That dude is a locked-in, week-out starter for one of the three best teams and one of the two best leagues in the world. And he puts on a national team shirt, and he's got 3 right feet. It's astounding. So, I was on the fence about him going because I don't know that we are a good enough team to turn away somebody that is a locked-in, week-in, week-out starter in Madrid. But I think this makes it a lot easier for me. I think this injury, you're not going. Sorry. We've seen it in the past where the U.S. has taken, people that are players that are right on the fence of injured or healthy. You think back to Oguchi Onyewu, who we've spent a lot of time talking about tonight at the 2010 World Cup in South Africa, who, did not have a good tournament. Not as bad as Ricardo Clark. Then, Josie Altidore going to Brazil in 2014 and exploding his his Achilles or his hamstring 10 minutes into the game, like he'd done 10 times before. So
the difference, though, Lawrence,
I don't want to take a guy who's injured and create a huge hole on the roster that otherwise wouldn't need to be there.
I think specifically the difference of why those two guys went is because we don't, in the history of our program, we've never had a striker like with the capabilities of Josie Altidore. You can't, not Brian McBride, no one. It's Josie Altidore is one of the most all-around best strikers we've had until now, but I said history. So, I'm with you. We knew we had injury problems, but what are you going to do? Say we don't need Josie? I don't know if you can say that. With Johnny, as much as I like him, we have guys who, I'm not saying, I think that he's better than them, but it's not like they're Tanner Tessman. He's on the same, he's about on par with them. I mean, in terms of he's okay. Is Aiden Morris up there? I don't know. It's just one of those where I'm with you that he's not good enough to hold a roster spot if he's not 100% healthy. Unlike other guys in the past that you mentioned that, whereas, look, if they are 90%, 80% even maybe, you got to have them on the roster. So that's just where I kind of agree with you with Johnny. I think for me, he should make the squad, but if you are not going to be 100% fit come training camp, I can't justify including you. That's where we're at. Speaking of guys who are going to be making injury comebacks, they do have timelines associated with these. Miles Robinson and Tim Ream are both out with leg injuries of some sort. Both are expected to be back at the end of May, early June. Now, I don't think it's any secret that Tim Ream is the favorite pairing for Chris Richards of Mauricio Pochettino. but that man is older than me. And I'm not saying I'm old. I'm not young, though. I'm definitely not young.
Nor are you
And
an international soccer player.
I'm old for an international soccer player, right? I'm old for any soccer player. I feel it. This is concerning because it's if Tim Ream alone were the one hurt, I'd be like, well, all right, well, if he's not fit by the time the roster is ready to go, then he's not coming, and it sucks for him. But like he's 87 or whatever he is now. That's just how it works, unfortunately. But I do think that the fact that, and I don't rate him super highly, but that Miles Robinson is also hurt does cause some problems for roster selection because I don't think it's unfair to say that Miles and Tim are in that group of like 5 center backs behind Chris Richards.
Yeah, it's a tough position. I mean, when I look at my roster for center backs, I don't have, Ream is on there, but where I don't have Miles on there. I look
But
at
if Ream were hurt and couldn't make it, would Miles have now then been in that?
No, not
like,
for
do you get
me.
what I'm saying?
Not for me because
you hate Miles Robinson.
No, I don't. I loved Miles Robinson. I think he missed out on the last World Cup because
I think he did too. Yeah,
and that's to me that's where I think his career kind of slipped a little bit. I mean, to me, what I have if in that position is I have not starting, but it's Richards, McKenzie, Scally, Freeman, and Trusty now. That's what I would have there. In to me, that's what I would do. And I'm using some right backs as right center backs, and I think they can fit that role.
Interesting.
For the position, one of the questions I have on that is, and I know this is a little bit of a stretch, but maybe not. I mean, does Anthony Robinson fit into a left center back position?
I don't think so.
Probably not, but he could if he needs to, right? Like he could play the role, but that's the thing. I mean, you don't have a lot of center back options. Who else you have after Miles Robinson? I mean, he's in the mix for sure. You're not bringing in Zimmerman. I mean, Blackman.
Yeah, no, please.
Campbell, George Campbell. I mean, other than that, I mean, you run out of names. Yeah. I mean, you're going down the path you don't want to go down.
That's the problem. Is again, yes, Tim Ream if he had gone down. Okay, if he's out, well, you could call up Miles, and you still have. For me, it would have been Richards, McKenzie, Trusty, Robinson. Like, okay, I don't feel great, but it's not like Tim Ream made me feel great either. So, yeah, everyone's competing for who starts next to Chris Richards. Now you're like, well, crap, do we got to give the 18-year-old a call? And is Nokai Banks now, like, on the phone saying, hey, man, remember how we said we want to guarantee you a World Cup roster spot? Well, we need a center back.
Now you're starting, right?
We need a guy. So that's kind of where I'm at, Lawrence. It's like, I think it's not either one of them. It's just that both of them together being hurt it's going to force Pochettino to have to think.
Yeah, and I'll maybe get some more tinfoil. We're running low on tinfoil around here tonight. We're not 100% sure what Tim Ream's injury really is. It's some sort of
FOTMOB says muscle injury.
Yeah, and that's always I'm from the days of covering 901 FC when there was a guy that was just like old and out of gas. It was a lower body injury and missed 2 or 3 games. My little tinfoil hat here, what's left of our tinfoil, is maybe Tim Ream's really not hurt, and they need to get him some rest before the World Cup because we saw what happened in March, and he was very slow afoot. And you've also made this point, we've all made this point about we're pretty sure Christian Roldan's a locked on member of this World Cup because he went to the Super Bowl and he's been making all these media appearances. Well,
and Pochettino called him the perfect player.
Yes. Well, Tim Ream,
which means I'm sure he'll be signed by whatever club hires him, Pochettino at the end of the
Tim Ream was just on yesterday, one of the Fox Sports talking head debate shows that Christian Roldan was also on last week. I think it's First Things First.
One of those. Yeah.
If we're gonna be like, hey, Roldan is going because of all of the stuff they're having him do, and now they're having Tim Ream do a lot of the same stuff.
Maybe he's taking over for Matt Crocker.
Maybe. Oh boy.
Yeah. Miles, according to FC Cincinnati, did train this week. Again, I don't know if that means full training. Yeah, he had a groin injury, so it's one of those where like, they said he'd be back in May. It is May, but they indicated it would be longer than this, so we shall see. But I'm with you, Lawrence. I think saying a muscle and just a vague muscle injury for Tim Ream without any real, oh, he hurt this and he's working back is, yeah.
It's very nebulous.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, those are the guys who are hurt. So hopefully everyone gets healthy because we want everyone to have a good shot at making a World Cup because that is a dream that they would all live up to. And we want our guys fit and healthy who are going to be on the roster. Thank you guys for joining me. Lawrence, tell us about anything you have working on. I know, again, I get emails from you weekly now that you're working with Beyond the 90, and I get all those Substack emails all the time. I don't know how they haven't gone to my, not spam, but the promotions folder. I'm like, I don't read half of these. But yours I do read.
Well, I appreciate that. And so I've got, I had one that I just posted today. Obviously, with the World Cup here, we're all excited about all the World Cup games. But there's a bunch of other friendlies that are getting played in the U.S. right before the World Cup. That's one of the benefits of hosting the World Cup. So I put up a list. Right now, we're at, I think, between May 30th and June 10th, we're at 23 friendlies being played here in the U.S. That's the U.S. national team. That's Brazil. That's Mexico. That's Scotland. That's Haiti, Peru, New Zealand, England.
Honduras is playing.
Honduras,
or Guatemala.
Argentina's playing in 2 college football stadiums.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot that's exciting there. And as more get announced, I'm hopeful we're going to be getting a few more. Somebody purporting to be a Korean soccer journalist has told me there is going to be at least one more Korean friendly here in the U.S. sometime at the end of May. I'm hopeful on a personal level because it's close to me. Japan is doing their base camp in Nashville, and Spain is doing their base camp in Chattanooga. I'm kind of halfway hoping those two play in Nashville so I can go. I don't have high hopes, but I still have some hope.
You would think that they would work something out there.
You would think, but then the last piece I did for Beyond the 90, a number of the historically and currently, a number of the players for the University of Memphis women's soccer team are Canadian. And they have a number, I think 7 former Memphis Tigers play in the new Northern Super League, which is more than any other American college. So I interviewed 2 sisters from Quebec and the assistant coach, who it's just now dawned on me, I forgot to ask where in Canada he's actually from, but on their excitement for World Cup, not just in the U.S., but also in their home country. So I did that probably 2 or 3 weeks ago. That's over up at Beyond the 90 as well.
And that is an interesting pipeline. I know, I'll say West Virginia University also had that. Nikki Oza-Brown had lots of Canadians, Keisha Buchanan and Ashley Lawrence, who were part of that gold medal winning team, winning asterisk team in 2021, but they were on that team as well. Yeah. Thomas, you also have been busy on the interwebs writing. We talked about what you wrote today for Chasing a Cup about things seeming to always be the same with U.S. soccer in light of Matt Crocker leaving, but you have other things out. So tell us what we can find from you on chasingacup.com.
Yeah, I have. I've submitted 6 pieces here in the last.
Busy.
Yes, I've got another one that I'm wrapping up about the captains based on the times. What is it called? I'm blanking. Time Magazine, Pulisic, and I just did I put together a quick little thing about the captain's history for the U.S. soccer and a little bit of my top 5 on there. So that will be coming. One just released this week. It's about just looking at the MLS players and that the growth that they've provided at the World Cup. So it's a piece there, kind of looking at the players from the U.S. and also in general how many players that we continue seeing playing in World Cups that are playing in the MLS. So that one's we released this week, and then I've got a bunch of ones about center backs. I'm sure that will come out shortly. The snubs in the past, some history. I did the voices of the U.S. U.S. men's national team at World Cup. That's a little one there that I put together. I just I've been whipping them out pretty quickly here. I had a few that I had written months and months ago, but I'm trying to just trying to get as much content out there as I can quickly do it. I'm hitting a good stride and I'm not getting any writer's block, so it's a busy time, but there's a lot of good information to be shared out there with the with the fans out there. So hopefully people are taking a look at that, reading up, and it gives you something to waste a few minutes during the day, reading some of that stuff. So it's exciting. Check Chasing the Cup up. I'll be posting those when they get released. I don't know. I don't have a specific schedule for those. I'm letting them kind of dictate kind of how they're rolled out here. But we're rapidly approaching the roster release here. It's coming quite quickly now. I see the content every day, so it's it's surprising it's this close at this point. It's you work up to this as these 4 years, and when it comes so quickly, it goes so quickly too. That's the joys and the kind of the pain of the World Cup. So keep an eye out for those.
Yeah. 36 days from the start of for the U.S.'s first game in the World Cup. That's where we are. You can follow Lawrence on Twitter at LDoc93. You can follow Thomas on Twitter at USKeeper. You can follow me on Blue Sky and Twitter at Soccer4UsPod. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me. Thanks, everyone, for listening. I'm Bart. I'm out.